Hello, and welcome to the Josh Sweeney podcast. I am your host, Josh Sweeney, and joining us on this episode is Taylor Lipsett. Thank you for taking the time to be here today, Taylor.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I don't think I've ever had that many cheers and applause when someone mentioned my name, so this is awesome already.
You like that? I had to throw in a little something for you.
Yeah, it makes me feel good about myself.
Right. Well, for those of you that don't know, Taylor Lipsett is an 11-time U.S. national sled hockey team member, and he was on the team from 2003 to 2014, which in itself is an amazing accomplishment. During that time, he went to the Paralympics 3 times. His first was in 2006, where he won a bronze medal. His second was in Vancouver in 2010, where he won a gold medal. And then in Sochi, again, winning a gold medal, becoming the first team to go back-to-back gold medalists. It was a huge deal at the time. Now they've gone 3 since Taylor and I left the team. But, just the fact that Taylor was on a team, the U.S. national sled hockey team, now it's going under the name of Para Ice Hockey Team, is amazing. I mean, when you, Taylor, when you look back on your career for those 11 years, what's the first thing you think about?
The first thing is really just the opportunity. When I was, I'm assuming we'll get into this a little more here in a little bit, but when I was 5 years old and was told that I would never get to play sports, as a little boy, and even a little girl, as a young person, being told that at such a young age is kind of devastating. So then for things to transpire the way they did and to be able to, represent our country on a team for 11 seasons was, truly amazing and something that, totally changed my life and, has led to a lot of great things while I played, and still after I retired, it still led to a lot of amazing things. So, just all good when I look back on it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I think I was on for 2011 till 2015, and then when I had a couple kids, took a break. But even during that short amount of time that I was on, I mean, it's just a lot of, it's just hard on your body. And I guess, we can lead straight into that. So one of the other reasons this is such an amazing accomplishment for Taylor is because he has a disability that is known as brittle bone disease, and the technical name is osteogenesis imperfecta. Now, I'll let Taylor explain more about that, but basically you were born with this, correct?
Right, yeah, it's a genetic mutation. And, when you say brittle bones, a lot of people automatically think, lack of calcium, just drink more milk and you'll be good, man. But it's actually a genetic mutation in the genes that produce collagen in the bones. And that's kind of what makes the bones strong and flexible to an extent. And when that gene is missing, it makes the bones really brittle. And so, when I was growing up, between the ages of 1.5 to 12, I basically broke any and every imaginable way, from the typical car accident, which, makes sense that you could break a bone in that situation, to rolling over in bed and my foot getting caught in the sheets and twisting it just the right way and fracturing my femur that way in between. And so it was definitely interesting there for a handful of years, like I said, between the ages of about 1 to 12 or 13.
That's crazy. And mentally, growing up, I don't think you were this way, but I'm going to ask this anyway. Were you the kind of kid that was constantly thinking about, I should probably not do that because I might hurt something? Or were you just like, I'm going for it?
Unfortunately for my parents and the insurance company, I was not really that hesitant to do anything. And so, when I was in middle school, and I guess towards the end of elementary school, my main mode of transportation, when I was with my friends, was I used to sit on a skateboard and would skateboard, sitting down, propelling myself with my hands all over the neighborhoods, probably in like a, I don't know, 2 to 3 square mile area. And, I got to the point where, I could hop off curbs and, I would hold on to my friends' pegs on their bicycles and we would get going fast and, going down hills like that. And, just doing crazy stuff that, yeah, like you said, someone growing up with brittle bones, you would think that they'd be a little more hesitant. But it really never kind of got in the way of me doing just normal things that kids would do. And, most of that is due to kind of that mentality that my parents kind of imparted into me when I was, super young. They never held me back from trying anything or doing anything. They always just helped me try to figure out a way to do it. Like I said, whether that's skateboarding or riding horses, I mean, you name it. We figured out a way for me to, just kind of be involved and do anything and everything that my brother and sister were doing. So I think that kind of led into, having that mentality as I grew up and, really even as an adult today, it's had a huge impact.
And so you have siblings. So you have one brother, one sister?
Right. Yeah. And I have an older brother and a younger sister.
And had they ever broken a bone with you?
No. You mean with me or caused it?
Or caused it?
I think my brother might have broke my arm one time. Like he karate chopped me, like we were just messing around,
Yeah.
Rough housing. And I think he might have fractured my arm one time. But that was the only time that's in question.
Yeah, I was just curious because I grew up with a younger brother and, especially brothers, like you just want a roughhouse. That's just what you want to do. You see each other and you're like, all right, go time. And so I was curious if that had ever happened because I know that, my brother and I, we heard each other just messing around, but I was thinking like, well, man, if I was Lipsett, like would I have accidentally put my, anyway,
right.
More curiosity than anything else, but that's, and then I think I remember seeing a picture of you in like a full body cast when you were a kid. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, between the ages of like 1.5 to 12, I was basically in a body cast from the chest down for about 6 months out of every year. A lot of times the cast would only come down halfway down one leg, the leg that wasn't broken at the time. But then it would go all the way down to my toes on the leg that was broken, and then it would come up just below my chest. And so, yeah, I lived in those about 4 to 6 months out of every year.
And what would you do to keep occupied? Or, I mean, were your parents getting schoolwork for you and saying like, all right, this is what we're doing today? Or how did that work?
Yeah, exactly. So, kind of going along with that mentality of, not holding me back and not being hesitant. Another thing that they did was they really encouraged me to focus on the things that I could do and not the things that I couldn't do. And so, even being in a body cast, I could still really focus on my schoolwork, whether I was in the hospital, whether I was recovering at home, or, actually in the classroom. I could always kind of put all of my focus and attention and effort into doing well in school. And coupled with that, at a really young age, I made kind of the mental commitment, and I verbalized this to my parents, maybe unfortunately, that I wanted to become a doctor someday. And so, obviously to become a doctor, you had to take school very, very seriously and focus on grades. So they kind of held me accountable to kind of, upholding those high standards and really rigorous academic kind of routines and focus throughout my whole entire schooling career. And so, I really just focused on school growing up, and we had not a tutor, but like an aide from the school district that would bring me my schoolwork in the hospital, or if I was recovering at home, and she would administer my tests and all that good stuff. And so I never really got too far behind, even if I was out of school for a few weeks, which really helped kind of keep my mind off things. It kind of stunk not being with my friends and things like that, but we made do. And like I said, I was always keeping things interesting. So I taught myself how to walk in body casts. I, kicked the soccer ball around. My parents would, set me up in a chair in the driveway, and I'd shoot baskets, with my friends and my brother and stuff. So, like I said, we really figured out a way for me to do anything and everything, kind of no matter what the situation we were in at the time.
That's awesome. That is definitely huge thing that your parents could provide for you. I know as a parent myself, sometimes it's easy to just say, no, don't, whatever, don't do that. You might get hurt. But when it comes down to it, you got to live your life. You got to do what you need to do to be able to learn life lessons and whatnot. And I think if, you definitely are a better person, and I guarantee it's the reason you got into sled hockey, which is my next question. How did that happen?
Yeah, it was actually super crazy. And even crazier, when I look back or think back on it and kind of verbalize it. But I was just at the grocery store with my mom on a Sunday afternoon. We kind of did that every Sunday together. And a lady kind of came around the corner, and, I saw her make eye contact with us, and she noticed that I was in a wheelchair, and, she came, shuffling up to us pretty quickly, and, started talking to my mom. And basically what had happened is that she had just gotten back from the 2002 Winter Paralympic Games, and her son-in-law actually played on the U.S. team that represented the U.S. in sled hockey at those Paralympic Games in Salt Lake City. And that team actually won a gold medal, the first gold medal for the U.S. sled hockey program. They only qualified for the tournament because we were the host country, and they ended up shocking the world. A lot of people think of it as equivalent to the, Paralympic version of the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
And ended up winning a gold medal in a shootout. And her son-in-law was a big part of that team, Lonnie Lee, and he was from the DFW area, and they were doing some events around that big win, in the local hockey community and in some of the rinks around town. And so she gave me his contact information and told me to get a hold of him if I was interested in, checking it out and, seeing the gold medals and that sort of thing. And I had never heard of sled hockey. I had never heard of the Paralympics. I knew about wheelchair basketball, and I'd asked my doctor when I was younger if I could play, and he straight up told me absolutely not, because if you haven't seen wheelchair basketball, they're actually pretty physical, but the most dangerous part is that they flip over in their chairs a lot of times.
Yeah.
And if I was to do that, when I was younger, that was a guaranteed broken bone, like no questions asked. And so, yeah, he told me early on that, I definitely didn't have his approval to play wheelchair basketball. And so I never even really thought about disabled sports, after that. I really just focused on schoolwork, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And, but this was around the same time that, the Stars had moved to Texas. They won the Stanley Cup in '99. And, I'd become a pretty big Stars fan. I played, street hockey with my brother and my friends. Somehow they always stuck me in the net and put me sideways. I guess I took up the most room in my wheelchair. But anyways, and so, I was intrigued. I was interested in, the sled hockey. And she said, they played on the ice and this and that. So a couple weeks later, my mom took me out to one of their first on ice. They did like a little celebration because there was actually 3 guys from the area on that 2002 gold medal team. And so they had a little celebration where you could get out there and try it. And so that was my first time on the ice. I loved it. I got to try on, one of the gold medals. And the next weekend, I went out for my first official practice, which was I was a little more hesitant for the actual practice because when I got there, I saw guys zipping around on the ice and kind of checking each other. And it was, a lot faster paced than just people trying it out. Right.
Yep.
And so I was a little more hesitant, but, they told me that, it was safe and, no one would kind of lay into me or anything like that. Everyone knew I was a new person. And, that was the practice that I absolutely fell in love with the sport. And, being young and naive, and not knowing the future, even though it turned out like this, I guess, but I told my mom on the way home, I was like, I'm going to win one of those gold medals playing sled hockey. And, supportive like she's always been. She was, okay, yeah, cool, go for it, son. But I'd only been on the ice twice, right?
Yeah.
And so, no one knew what the future held, but that was kind of the start of it.
That's really cool. I know Lonnie. He also is the one that helped get me to where I ended up in my career. But it's funny that kind of Enrico and Jen Lee, and it's funny that everybody he gets into the sport, or his mom, seem to do pretty well. So that's good on them. They should look further into that one.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that the other day, and I think I counted, not including himself, he's somewhat involved or responsible in some way for 7 other Paralympic gold medalists in the sport of sled hockey.
Wow.
Which is crazy, given that all those guys were introduced to the sport and came from Texas, when they were playing sled hockey. So, yeah, that's pretty nuts.
And so, just to clear this, you did put the gold medal on when you were a kid, and you still went on to win 2 gold medals.
I did, yeah. Okay. So I tell people that there is no Stanley Cup jinx in when it comes to gold medals. So you can touch them, you can put them on, and things will turn out all right for you.
And that's from personal experience, which is awesome. So then going from that practice, I mean, how did you end up making the national team? Did you just work super hard and go to tryouts, or again, were you working with Lonnie, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so it was actually a little bit of an unconventional route. And I kind of progressed rather quickly. And, when I have these deeper conversations with people, and we kind of get into the weeds on things, I credit a lot of my, especially early success, to the fact that I used to ride around on that skateboard, and I used my hands to propel myself, which is the exact same motion that we used to skate in sled hockey.
Yeah.
On a skateboard, you lean side to side to, kind of turn and maneuver, which is the exact same muscles that you use in sled hockey to turn and shift, your weight side to side. And so I think that really had a huge impact on my early success and kind of climbing up the ranks, as you might say, to being someone that was a contender for a spot on the national team. So within a year and a half of being introduced to the sport, I was introduced to the sport in April 2002. And then, so by the end of 2003, I had made the junior national team, or I guess it was the summer of 2003. I had made the junior national team at the time, which was all players under 18. Basically just the best young up and coming sled hockey athletes around the country. And I got a phone call in January 2004 from the national team coach. And he said that they had a couple of injuries on the team in a recent tournament, and they were getting ready to go to the World Championships in Sweden in March. And they needed a couple players to fill some spots, and my name had been literally thrown into a hat. And, after I joined the team, Lonnie told me the story, and he said the coach literally had everyone on the team write down 2 people's names on a piece of paper and throw them into a hat for him to, pick from to invite out for a training camp to see if they fit in. So, this really tells you where the quality of players and stuff is now compared to then and the talent pool. But yeah, so luckily enough, again, I had Lonnie on my side, and he kind of made a case for me to be flown out to their January training camp in Colorado Springs. And I guess you can say I had a good showing, and he asked me if I'd be interested in joining the team to go to the World Championships in March 2004. And yeah, that was kind of how it all started. It was unconventional in the sense that I didn't go to a tryout and, I guess earn a spot at the tryouts. But nonetheless, it got me a spot on the team.
Yeah. And did your disability ever come up when you guys were talking about that? Was it ever like a question of, hey, are you going to be good for playing? Because, I mean, you see the hits nowadays and, watching the last Paralympics and even the last World Championships. I mean, those hits are huge.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, by the time that I was invited, out to take part in the training camp, I had already been playing on the men's team. So even though I was only 15, I turned 16 in 2000, or I guess I turned 17 in 2004. I had already been playing on our men's team and playing in men's tournaments for a year by then, and so I kind of had figured out by that point what my style of play was going to be, how to protect myself in certain situations or just not put myself in certain situations. And so I don't think it really ever came up because everyone knew that I could kind of play at that level and in a sense protect myself to a certain degree. Now that doesn't mean that I have never gotten hurt playing sled hockey, but yeah, I had kind of figured it out and it wasn't really in question with that coaching staff, I might add.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. And I don't want to focus too much on your disability, but I do think I forgot to ask you about when you were growing up as a kid. And I do want to focus on this a little bit before we move even deeper into your sled hockey career. Is what was it like growing up with other kids, knowing that you were different, and how did you, I guess, handle that in such a positive way?
Yeah, I don't, thinking back on it, I don't ever really remember like a lot of adversity in a social aspect. Obviously, you see people look at the chair, and especially when I was in a body cast, so often. But I think that kind of, in a sense, helped because it's literally the only thing I ever knew. I was in body cast, from the age of 1.5 on. And so my earliest childhood memories, I was still always in a cast, and I was used to people looking because, obviously it sticks out. Yeah. But, also when I was younger, up until I was 10, once I was out of the cast, I always learned how to walk, or not learned how, but I always started walking again. And so I guess that possibly helped as well because I wasn't always in a chair early on. So I knew once I got out of the cast, I would be walking again. And so it wasn't really a big deal to me. And I also had, just really awesome friends. Two of my childhood friends from, kindergarten are still two of my closest friends today. And, I can remember, and my mom has told me stories about, coming home from the hospital when I was still, literally strung out on painkillers because of, undergoing a surgery or this and that. And my best friend would come over immediately, even though I was still sleeping, for 15, 16 hours a day. And I would wake up and they'd be there, just waiting for me to kind of come out of the haze of, surgery and all that. And so, I think having those kinds of people around me, those really close friends, really made a huge impact on kind of my mentality and not feeling so different.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I really didn't ever have any big issues. There was one kid that kind of bullied me for a very short amount of time in elementary school, but it was quickly squashed. And that was really the only time I ever dealt with anything negative, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. It might have just been the time of when I grew up. Obviously bullying is a huge issue these days, and I'm sure it's always been somewhat of an issue for a lot of people. But, I was fortunate enough in my school and the group of people that I grew up with, it wasn't really an issue for me.
Just having that support system with your friends and your family and everyone kind of continuing to include you in everything they were doing was just positive enough to where you said, I'm not worried about the others looking at me?
Yeah. Well, and actually just thinking about it, so I did have one negative experience growing up in school, and it was kind of a reoccurring thing. And it came to PE class. And so I had this gym teacher in PE class that didn't want me to get hurt, under his watch. And so, early in my elementary school, career or life, he would literally just make me sit and watch every single day, whatever the other kids were doing. And that happened for a number of years, 2 or 3 years. And, it got to the point, as I was getting a little older in elementary school that, that started to not sit right with me. And, I wanted to be involved. I knew I could be involved in, a number of different things that they did, whether it was, being the pitcher for both teams during kickball, or, one of the everyone's favorite game growing up in elementary school is dodgeball, right?
Yeah.
And, I could do that. You don't have to run to be able to do that. I could catch a ball, I could throw a ball. If they hit my chair, I'm out. It took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, for my parents to kind of beat it through his head and, the school administrator's heads that, I needed to be included and could take part in most of the activities that they were doing. And I think once we got past that, things were really good, because then I was able to, show my athleticism, which I'd always been very athletic growing up. I mean, I could dribble a basketball with both hands when I was 3 years old. So my brother played sports, my sister played sports. So I was always around some kind of athletics. And so once the school got on board with kind of letting me be included, it really kind of changed the game. And yeah, from then on out, it wasn't really an issue.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, sometimes it just takes parents stepping in, huh?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, and especially when you're dealing with someone with a disability or, whether it's physical or learning disability, mental disability, like a lot of times school administrators and teachers and PE coaches, they don't know what is best. Their first reaction is to just kind of be hands off, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they think is safest for them. But, parents usually know best in those situations. They know how their kids operate and what makes them tick and, kind of what their abilities are. And yeah, it's just getting people to focus on what kids with different abilities can do and not really focus on what they can't do. You know what I mean? And, if you just kind of approach it with that kind of mindset and kind of just educate people, it goes a long way in changing their perception.
For sure. Yeah. Cause I mean, if I'm putting myself in that coach's position, I wouldn't think if I had you come into my class, like, oh, he could be the pitcher. I would instantly just think like, oh, he should probably get out of the way. And so, having you or, your parent or whoever come over to me and say, look, it's cool. He can get hit with a ball. It's not a big deal. Like, he's not going to break instantly and shatter in a million pieces. He just, he's going to have to do certain jobs. So, that's definitely something to remember for anybody listening. If you need to advocate for yourself or your child or whoever it is that you think can do something, do it.
Yeah, exactly. And just to clarify, or kind of not in the coach's defense, but, when we talk about brittle bones and, me breaking, so between the ages of 1.5 and 12, I had broken about 90 times. And so, it's not like I just broke a bone here or there. And so, in his defense, I guess, he just didn't want to be responsible, right? Because he knew I'd gone to the same elementary school, my whole schooling, life. So that thus far. And so he knew, how much I broke, how easy it was for me to break. And he just didn't want to be responsible. But yeah, like you said, if you focus on, some of the things that kids can do, without being put at risk or anything like that, there's always some kind of better solution.
Yeah. All right. So now that we're back off that, you go 2004, you go to World Championships. Is that what you said?
That's right. Yeah.
And so how did you do there?
So we did good. We ended up winning a silver medal which for me, I was, ecstatic, right? I took my first flight ever in January 2004 to Colorado Springs. And then, 2 months later, I took my first international flight to Sweden. And so, I was on cloud nine,
Yeah.
again, thinking back to being told I would never get to play sports. And here I am, 17 years old, with a silver medal. I wore that thing to school, for like a week when I got back, just because I was so proud of it. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So since then, I've gone back and actually spoken to kids at that elementary school. So it's turned out all right. But yeah, I was super excited. I got to play in my first games. I scored my first goal at that tournament. It was actually one of the cooler goals of my career. I was. A lot of people call it the Gretzky, but I was behind the red line, kind of to the side of the goal, and I shot it off the goalie's back and in, which it was intentional. It was an intentional, bank shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. That was my first goal and my first international tournament and my first international medal. And so it was a big, 3 months there for me. My first trip with the national team, my first medal.
And so then after that experience, and I mean, scoring, your first international tournament is really cool. Did you feel like I'm a part of the team, I'm a member of the team, or was it still like, I'm still the new guy, I still got to put in a ton of work to be able to keep playing on this team? Kind of what was the feeling, post that event?
Yeah, no, I was still, I still definitely felt like I had to do a ton of work. And, I'm sure we'll kind of get to this later as far as where the sport is today. But, back then, like I wasn't really watching what I ate. Up to that point, getting onto the national team, I wasn't really working out a lot. I was skating, once, maybe twice a week. And so there wasn't a whole lot of, kind of off or away from training camp training that I had been doing up to that point. Like I said, I hadn't tried out for the national team. It wasn't something I had planned on so quickly. And so after experiencing some of these training camps and the world championships, it really opened my eyes and showed me that I had to put more away from our training camps and tournaments to become a better player. And, really it kind of solidified to me mentally what my role was going to be on the team. Every sport, every team has, certain role players. And, obviously with Brittle Bones, I was never going to be the big enforcer. I wasn't going to go out there and lay big hits, and set a tone of physicality in a game or anything like that. And so I really just focused on developing my hands, my stick handling skills, and my shot, because that was something I could do at home by myself all the time. I could sit in the living room floor in my sled and get a tennis ball or a wooden ball and practice stick handling. I could shoot in the garage, whatever I needed to do. And so that's kind of what I focused on most early on, was kind of developing and solidifying that role on the team, which was to be, a playmaker and a goal scorer.
Yeah. Again, you're just kind of the theme of this episode seems to be focused on what you can do, not what you can't do. And that's
exactly. Yep, exactly.
And so 2 years later, 2006 Paralympic Winter Games in Torino. That was your first Paralympics.
Yep.
And yeah, what was that like?
It was nuts, man. Like seriously crazy. You can't prepare someone for what the experience is like during the opening ceremonies of a Paralympic Games or an Olympic Games. Like it is just a whole different level of surreal. You know what I mean? And obviously you know what I mean,
yeah.
since you experienced it, but, like just, first off, the first really cool, part of the whole process was, when we got all of our clothing and, outfitted with all of our gear. Right. So for those of you that don't know, or have never talked to someone that's been to the Olympics or Paralympics, we get like 4 or 5 suitcases full of clothing, from dress clothing to athletic wear to the official opening and closing ceremony apparel, hats, sunglasses, gloves, shoes, like literally everything you can think of. We got just bags and bags full of this stuff. So that was, one of the coolest things to me, because I remember they shipped it to my house. And so I opened it at home with my parents, and that was super cool. And then we got to the village, and, experiencing the village was super cool. Everything was free. We had a little key fob for Powerades and sodas. There was a McDonald's inside. You could eat anything, all throughout the day whenever you wanted to. They had all different kinds of food set up. They had game rooms. They had a gym. I mean, it was literally like a little mini city where everything is free. Being my first Paralympics, my eyes were just, wide open, huge. I probably looked like a deer in headlights the entire tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, what was the feeling like in Torino? Was that because I know the Paralympics has gotten a lot bigger as far as media and support and this and that since then, but did it still feel like you were, you were the focus at that time? I mean, you go to Mascot.
Yeah, for sure. Because, even at that time, coming from, little world championships in, small towns in Europe, or, from tournaments in the US with club hockey teams, that still is a much larger setting. I want to say there was like 4,000 or 5,000 people at the games, at some of the games. And so that's still, so substantially more than, any of us had ever played in front of, except the guys that were returning from 2002. And so that experience is so crazy. And to even have, 5 media people would have been crazy to us, because there had never been media people around any of, the tournaments I had been to. And so, the fact that there were, a handful of media people there covering the games. We had Secret Service people with us that followed our team around everywhere. We had, police escorts to and from the village and to the rink for games. And so, just that level of environment was so new. And, as a young kid, in college, it felt so cool. It really made you feel like you were living the life of a professional athlete for a couple of weeks.
That's really cool. So you guys end up winning bronze there. How did that pan out?
Yeah, so it was kind of, there's kind of 2 sides to the coin, right? So on one side, super cool. It was my first Paralympics. I medaled. There's so many athletes that go to the Paralympic Games and never get to medal. There are so many disabled athletes that never even get to make a Paralympic team. And so just the honor of making the U.S. Paralympic team, going to a Paralympic Games and coming home with a medal was something that, I was super proud of. I really had to appreciate it. But by that time, on the other side of the coin, I was, a pretty core member of the team now. And the team was kind of not broken up, because we were still a cohesive group and everyone, got along and whatnot. But there was kind of two groups. We had the older guys on the team that, were guys that returned from 2002. And, I call that the first generation of sled hockey in the U.S. They were the guys that really helped the sport get going around the country. They won the gold medal in 2002. Like, those are the guys that laid the groundwork, really for where even the program is today. But then you had guys that were much younger, guys that were in high school and college. We were very, passionate about the game. We were kind of super committed to working out and training at home, working on the ice, off the ice. And so after the bronze medal game in Torino, all the young guys on the team, I remember Andy Yohe was in this meeting. Taylor Chase was in the meeting. Jimmy Conley was in the meeting. There was a handful of us young guys that kind of got together, and we were like, this this was super amazing. This whole experience was super cool. But when you win a medal, all it really does is make you want to get better. And, you know, when you win a bronze medal, it makes you want to go for a silver or a gold medal. So literally that night, a group of us sat in a room and kind of committed to each other that we were going to do whatever we had to do the next 4 years to win a gold medal in 2010. And, you know, that wasn't just a commitment to the team and, you know, working out and, you know, training on the ice. Like, that was like personal commitments, sacrifices that we were going to have to make. And we can get into it if you want to talk about me personally, what that meant. But, you know, at that time, after the bronze medal game, we made that commitment to each other. And that was kind of the start of, I mean, you can't argue now, to the start of the dynasty of what is U.S. sled hockey.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And yeah, I would love to hear, you know, we know 2010 you won a gold medal, and I would love to hear what kind of sacrifices you did make, because I think that that's an important thing for people to understand.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a really interesting time because, so, I mean, we kind of bounced around years and whatnot, but I had mentioned earlier that at the age of 7 years old, I made that decision to become a doctor. And I had, you know, that had been my focus my entire life. I graduated high school with a 3.95 GPA. I was ranked 15th out of 420 in my class. I got an academic scholarship to SMU here in Dallas. And I was majoring in biochemistry and as part of their pre-med program. And so, like, I was, you know, on track to do this whole doctor thing, right? This med school thing, which had been the driving force behind my entire existence since I was 7 years old. But then I was introduced to sled hockey, you know, when I was a junior in high school, and then had gone on to make the national team and go to my first Paralympics. And so by the time Torino came around and we won the bronze medal, I was a sophomore at SMU. I was in my second year of their pre-med program. And I had a 3.65 GPA. And I remember meeting with my academic advisor, and she straight up told me, like, if you don't have a 3.75, no medical school will even look at your application. Well, at that time, I was going to school for like 8 hours a day. I was training for an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. And then as soon as I got home, I was doing nothing but studying and, you know, doing homework until about 11 p.m. And, you know, being an elite athlete, you can't really sacrifice a ton of sleep, you know, to cram all night or whatever, because you have to recover from the training because you have to train the next day.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't sacrifice any more sleep because I was back up at, you know, 6 a.m. to go back to school. And so there was literally, unless I could add, you know, more than 24 hours into a day, I had to make some decisions. And I had just gotten back from the Paralympics. So the Paralympics were in like March. I had this meeting with my academic advisor in May at the end of, you know, the spring semester. And I just committed to all my brothers on the sled team that I was going to do anything and everything I had to do to win a gold medal in 2010. And I couldn't sacrifice training time because making that commitment meant I needed to train more. I needed to train harder, and I couldn't add days into or hours into the day. And so I couldn't sacrifice studying if I was going to stay on this pre-med path, because I was already behind the 8 ball if I had a 3.65 and I needed a 3.75 GPA. And so at that point I made the decision to, I guess, you know, give up on becoming a doctor. I decided to switch my major to business, and for the first time in my life, I had kind of felt like I had failed at something. You know, I had never really failed at anything in my life, whether it was school, or, my young, sled hockey career, all the goals that I had set, I had achieved. And, in some of those goals in relatively short time, from being introduced to the sport to making the Paralympic team, within a year and a half, that's a very short timeline. And so this decision to give up on med school and, change my major to business and kind of go all in on hockey, was really kind of tough for me because, like I said, it was the first time I felt like I had failed at something. All my teachers had supported me all these years, and held me accountable academically, because they knew I wanted to be a doctor. My parents had supported me and, held me accountable because they knew I wanted to become a doctor. My own doctor, which I've had the same doctor since I was 5 years old. He supported me. He always asked me about my grades, how I was doing, in school. And, so in a sense, early on in this decision-making process, I felt like I would be letting all of these people down, because all these people had supported me for so long. And so I really did struggle with that for a while. I don't think I actually made the official switch until, enrollment started for that next semester, after the summer break. So that summer was tough, for sure, because, you never want to feel like you're letting people down. Right. But, I had also just made that promise and commitment to my guys on the sled team. And so if I didn't make this decision, I'd be letting them down. But, through talking through that with my parents, I talked through it with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. We really, they helped me kind of think through it and realize that just because you have a goal that you set early on in life, life is a crazy thing, right? You never know what direction things are going to go. And I never would have known that I would be introduced to the sport of sled hockey and have these opportunities to play a sport internationally and travel all over the world and go to the Paralympic Games multiple times. And so at the end of the day, I was able to come to, grips with the decision and be confident in the decision. And instead of thinking of it like I had failed at something, I more so was able to kind of wrap my head around it in the sense that my life has just changed directions. I've been presented with this amazing opportunity, and this, awesome sport, that I didn't know about, during this whole time that I wanted to be a doctor. And my life is just kind of taking a pivot. It's changing directions. And I've now made this decision to go all in on hockey. And so I made the switch to business and went all in on hockey.
And we're all glad you did, especially myself, because it turned into helping me become the player I am as well. But yeah, no, that sounds very tough, but it sounds like, like you consulted just that system around you that you knew would support you in the right decision. And they did. So you're back 4 years later after deciding all this, going to Vancouver. Did it feel different than Torino because it was your second time, or did it feel the exact same, just round two?
No, it was way different. In a few different ways. One way, it was my second time, so I wasn't as mesmerized by the process, right? I wasn't mesmerized by, getting all the free clothes, which, was still super cool. But in 2010, Ralph Lauren had taken over. So we got all this super cool Ralph Lauren stuff. So all that was still cool. The experience was cool, but I wasn't mesmerized. I wasn't a deer in headlights anymore. I had been, on the national team for 6 years. I had really solidified my place on the team. I was in some way a veteran on the team now. So my thinking, my confidence had changed, it had grown. And for the past 4 years, that core group of guys, we had done literally everything that we could do to put ourselves in the best possible position to win a gold medal and we went into Vancouver with a certain level of confidence that we had never had before, and that all started in the previous season when we won the World Championships in 2009. We hadn't lost a game since those World Championships, so we didn't lose that entire season leading up to Vancouver, and so yeah, just the level of confidence was different. You know, on the ice we were, lights out. The team was very cohesive. Yeah, like we knew that we were going to win. Bottom line, going into it, we knew we were going to win no matter what.
And not only did you guys win, but there was something else that was really special about that Paralympics, correct?
Yeah. So we became the first team, and I'm pretty confident to say in stand-up men's or women's Olympic and Paralympic history, to go undefeated and not give up a single goal the entire tournament. So we had 5 straight shutouts, and ended up, winning the gold medal 2-0 over Japan. That's
amazing. And that's just really cool. I really don't have anything else to add to that. That is super cool.
It was really neat. And the funny thing is, I don't remember any of us ever talking about that being on the line in Vancouver. Like, even before the gold medal game, we weren't like, oh, we haven't given up any goals. We can't let them score. Like, that wasn't even in a topic of conversation. Like, we didn't even realize that till I want to say till we got back home. Someone brought that up. But yeah, that was just the mentality that the team had was, just don't give anything up and take care of business.
Yeah. And so then you're feeling really good about your decision that you had made before that you were, in such turmoil about, right? And what was your feelings? Where were you, at post 2010?
Yeah. So I had actually planned to retire, after 2010, because I had just graduated from college in 2009. I got married in 2009. I kind of had thought that I was going to, really just focus on my career, which had gone exactly how I wanted it to go, since I had made that switch over to business. And so, I had all intentions of retiring and really just focusing on my career and, possibly starting a family, in, 2 or 3 years or whatever. But, I kind of alluded to this earlier. The only problem with winning a gold medal is that once you win one, you want to win another one. And on top of that, in the sport of sled hockey, no team had ever won back-to-back gold medals. So, Vancouver made us the first team to ever win 2 gold medals in the sport, because, the team won in 2002 and then we won in 2010. But no team had ever won back-to-back gold medals. And so having that taste of gold and just still being physically, fit to be able to be and play at that level and have a positive impact on the team. I decided not to retire. And, again, that core group of guys on the team, we kind of all decided to, re-up that commitment to each other that we were going to do, whatever we needed to do over the next 4 years to make another go at it in 2014.
So you keep training. Are you done with school at this point? Now that you said you graduated, or are you?
Yeah. So, I graduated in 2009, and I just want to make this point. When a Paralympic or an Olympic athlete talks about like committing to go for another games, like people have to realize that is 4 years commitment. Like, it's not like, okay, I'm committing for another, 6 or 9 months of a hockey season. Like, you're committing 4 years of your life. Like, think about how much things change in 4 years. Anyone's life changes in 4 years. Like, that is a huge commitment to make.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to point that
totally,
out.
Yep.
But yeah, so I had graduated school, started my career with Bank of America. When I switched to business, my whole goal was to work in investing. And so literally the day after I graduated, I got a job offer with Bank of America's private wealth management side of the business. At that time, I was doing oil and gas investment stuff. And so like my career was perfectly lined up with kind of where I wanted it to be. I just gotten married to my high school sweetheart. Life was awesome. But the sport had changed very much over the course of 2006 to 2010. I kind of said this earlier, like in 2004, 2006, we didn't have to do a lot of off ice training. I wasn't watching what I was eating. I wasn't, in the gym every day. But that really changed, leading up to 2010, which, I think was one reason we were so dominant. Again, there was a lot of us young guys on that 2010 team that were all in on this sport. So we were training on the ice, off the ice, nonstop. But the talent pool in the U.S. had gotten so much deeper, so like in 2004, 2005, when I tried out for the first time in 2005, since I didn't try out the first time, yeah. I think we had like maybe 25 people show up to tryouts. And of those 25, there were really only 14 that were good enough to make it, but they had to choose 15. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, it was very different. But by 2010, 2011, like we were having like 50 plus people come to tryouts. There were legit like 25, 30 guys that had a chance. And so you had to continue to train at an insane level just to keep pace with the talent pool that was growing in the sport in the U.S. And I'll just give a shout out. Like a lot of that was due to the commitment that USA Hockey kind of, gave to the sport of sled hockey at the grassroots level in the United States. They put a lot of time and resources into growing the sport, establishing more club hockey teams around the country, which, again, has just, it's been a cause and effect up the stream all the way to the Paralympic team, to having better talent pool, having better players. And so, it was a big commitment, and we kind of made that commitment to each other. Again, I was, right in the middle of the beginning of my career, right in the middle of the beginning of my marriage. And just to make it more interesting, as if that wasn't all difficult enough to juggle, in 2011, I decided to go back and start my master's degree. So there's a lot on the plate. It was quite the juggling act for a while.
You just missed school that much.
I did. Yeah. I missed it. And I mean, I've always said if I could get paid to go to school, I'd probably be a career student, but yeah, they kept charging me to go to school. So, I eventually had to call that quits.
Yeah. And so you're juggling all this, you're training, you make it onto the 2014 team that's headed to Sochi again. Now it's your third time. Do you feel even more seasoned? Is it almost to the point where you're like, all right, whatever, just give me my free stuff and let me get to the games already?
Not necessarily that casual, but my role on the team had definitely changed. I was in my 10th, 11th season, so I was for sure, a veteran. I was a guy that a lot of the young guys, looked up to, not just on the ice, but, off the ice, which I took that kind of role very serious. Cause we had some young kids on the team, 15, 16 years old, going into Sochi, and physically I wasn't the same as I was in 2010. I had broken my shoulder in 2013, and, being hard headed and the awful patient that I'd always been, I kind of rushed back, and I would even argue to this day, even like my shoulder has never been the same. It's just weaker. It always hurts. And so I just wasn't the same physically as I was in 2010. So my role on the team had changed as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By this time, we had Declan Farmer on the team. We had Brody Roybal on the team. We had Josh Sweeney on the team. Like, I was not being counted on to score, multiple goals a game or scoring that, big goal in a big semifinal or gold medal game. That wasn't my role anymore. And I was fairly comfortable with that. Mentally, I was comfortable with that. I knew that I wasn't the same player I was in 2010, but I also knew that I had a very important role on the team in making sure that these younger guys, both in age and experience in the sport, were focused on the games and not getting sidetracked by the glitz and glamour. Because, to an extent, by 2014, there was some glamour around the sport. You know what I mean? There were, myself included, there were guys that had agents. There were guys that had sponsors. It had become a little bit more of, kind of a professional sport environment. Even though we weren't paid, the mentality and the level of professionalism that we, held ourselves to, was, fairly high. And so I felt like my role on the team by 2014 was to be a leader in that aspect, in that regard, and, make sure that I was there for the newer and younger guys to be a good example on and off the ice, make sure everyone was focused, ready to play, and that sort of thing. So it was still super exciting. Every games is so different. The villages are different. The environments are different. The opening ceremonies is still literally one of the top, the 3 opening ceremonies that I attended are like top 5 things I've ever done. The birth of my daughters being the other 2.
Yeah.
And so, the whole experience is still amazing, no matter if you've gone 1 time, 2 times, 10 times. But my role had definitely changed. My mentality had changed. And so it was definitely different.
Yeah. And that's really cool to see. And having seen it firsthand, it was cool to see that, because being my first and only Paralympics going, yeah, you're, like you said at the beginning, you're just like, whoa. And it's this huge experience. And you're, and having someone like you in the locker room to be able to say like, all right, hey, like, here's what we need to be paying attention to, and here's what you need to be focused on, and being able to kind of put all that other stuff away so that we can focus on the reason we're there is huge. And it's a, big testament to your character of not having to be that guy and being able to help others.
Yeah. Hopefully, I guess, I'll take a little credit. I guess it worked out because Josh Sweeney got me my second gold medal. In the gold medal game, you scored that goal. Obviously, you were ready to go. Scored the only goal in the gold medal game against Russia. So, it was awesome to see guys like yourself and the young guys get to experience their first Paralympics and win their first gold medal. It was definitely super cool.
And now you're a back-to-back gold medalist. What does that feel like?
So that was, it was amazing, still is amazing. The 2 gold medals I have are like 2 of the coolest things I will ever have in my possession. They just have so much character and so much meaning behind them, not just, the personal success or the team success, but just going all the way back to being 5 years old and my parents imparting into me that thought process of focusing on what I can do, not what I can't do, and how that just translated to all different areas of my life growing up. Like, they mean so much, those medals. And so it was really amazing, to be able to call myself a back-to-back gold medalist. There was only a handful of us in the entire world that could say that. Not every not every player on that team could say that because it was their first games. There was only, 6 or 7 of us that were returning from Vancouver. And so being a part of that group was really special, despite, kind of things in Sochi not going the way I wanted personally. Being able to be a part of that brotherhood, that group of guys that accomplished that together was super cool.
Yeah, definitely. I know I was jealous. All you guys sit in the room like, yeah, we got our second one, and I'm like, well, I got my first one. It's still pretty cool.
Hey, how do you think I feel now with those guys walking around with 3 of them?
Oh, I know. And so you retire after 2014, but you just hadn't had enough with USA Hockey. So what are you doing now with USA Hockey?
So, I want to take a step back because I think it's worth just noting. So I actually decided to try to come back to the national team in 2017 to try to make my 4th Paralympic team. I just mentioned that, personally for me, Sochi didn't go how I wanted it to go. From that nagging shoulder injury, my performance, my level of fitness wasn't what it needed to be. And so I actually sat in 3 games, including the gold medal game in Sochi. And so I didn't even get to play in the gold medal game. So essentially I ended my career in the stands watching my team win a gold medal. And while I knew I had been there for every training camp, I had helped make everyone on the team better on and off the ice. I knew I played a huge part in the team winning that gold medal. Ending my career in the stands was not how I had ever envisioned me ending my career.
Yeah.
And it did not sit well with me. And so I decided to try to make a comeback in 2017. By this time I was, smack dab in the middle of my career, married. We had a daughter, by this time. And so, again, I always have to make things super challenging and difficult. So juggling all these things, a family, career, trying to get back in shape after gaining 40 pounds during my wife's pregnancy. Not sure how that worked, but nonetheless, I had 40 pounds to lose. And so I really, committed myself to make that comeback and did literally anything and everything I could do. I wanted to be able to tell myself if I did or didn't make the team that I did everything I could do. There was literally nothing else I could have done, no stone unturned to give myself a chance to make the team. And so I ended up losing 50 pounds, went to tryouts in better shape than I was in Vancouver when I was the leading scorer on the team at the Vancouver Paralympics. I was in better shape physically, and I ended up not making the team in 2017. So I didn't make that 4th Paralympic team like I wanted to, like I had set out to, which was another difficult time, in my life, in my career, because I had literally poured everything into it. I had an awesome showing at tryouts, but, I didn't make the team. But the fact that when I went on the journey, when I started the journey, I told myself I was going to do everything that I could, and I wasn't going to put myself in a position where I had to question myself if I could have done something different or better. I came to grips and accepted that. After a while, it took a while, but I came to grips with, not making that team and not, going to a 4th Paralympic Games. But it was tough. And so, I think, in the same sense, and, talking about all the success and, gold medals, it's always worth noting that, it's not always success and gold medals. Sometimes you get cut, but in that sense, I was able to end my career after I didn't make that team. I officially retired. I was able to end my career on my terms because I had done everything that I could do personally, and that is kind of what ultimately helped me sleep at night.
Yeah, and that's just another good life lesson is sometimes that's how it goes. You put everything into your goal or your dream. You just make your sacrifices. You do everything you can to be there to do what you think you are going to end up doing, and it doesn't work out. And that's just part of it. And
Yeah,
I think you have,
it sucks, but,
yeah.
but yeah, as long as you can't question yourself, as long as you can't say, well, I could have done this, I could have done that, then yeah, you eventually are able to kind of, get to some sort of peace with that.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, you've found a way to still be involved within the sled hockey community, within USA Hockey, outside of actually being a player on the team. And I know you're still very influential within the sled hockey community.
Yeah. So yeah, after Sochi, when I retired for the first time, shortly after that, I decided to run for a spot on USA Hockey's board of directors as an athlete director. And to be an athlete director, you have to have competed on a USA Hockey national team within the last 10 years. It's voted on by other USA Hockey national team members and previous national team members from the sled hockey team, from the women's national team, and from the men's world championship and Olympic teams. And so I was elected to be an athlete director on the board of directors in 2015, I think it was. And ever since then, I've kind of just made it my commitment to continue to try to give, players a voice within USA Hockey on the board of directors, to make sure that when, very important decisions are being made, that, sled hockey athletes in those decisions, how to affect them, how it's going to impact the sport. And so I've been doing that, since 2015. And this last summer, I was elected to serve on the executive committee within the board of directors, which I guess is kind of like the highest level of committees that you can have as a volunteer or a board of director member within USA Hockey. So that was really exciting to me because now, I'm able to give sled hockey athletes a voice at the very highest level of USA Hockey, which has not ever happened before. And, I take that with, a great pride and responsibility. There's still a long way to go in terms of, representation of disabled athletes in the United States. And so I think there's still, despite how amazing USA Hockey has been, both at the grassroots and all the way up to the national team level, there's still things that can be done better. And to be able to have the opportunity to help, have an impact on those changes is something I'm super excited about. I just had my first executive committee meeting last month in November. So that was really cool. And on top of that, just to make things even more fun and exciting, I was also named as the sled hockey representative for the entire U.S. For USA Hockey. So, that position kind of entails being just the go-to person for people that, have questions about the sport of sled hockey, the equipment, how to start a new program, kind of just that first main point of contact for someone new or someone that has an issue with a club team or whatever.
And so if somebody listening to this hears you say that and wants to contact you, what is their easiest way to do that?
Yeah, so my email and everything is on USA Hockey's website. So if you go to their website, there's a section for disabled hockey, then a section for sled hockey, and my name is right there as the sled hockey rep for USA Hockey. It's got my name, email. It might have my phone number. I'm not sure, but you can just shoot me an email. And again, whether it's just a question about what your closest team might be, or if you want to start a team. If you have questions about equipment, I get all different kinds of questions. I get questions from students in school doing projects on the sport. I've gotten emails from people that run rinks that are interested in making their rink sled hockey accessible, and they want to talk through what that looks like. And so, really just anything and everything involving the sport of sled hockey in the U.S., you can reach out.
That's awesome. So what's next for Taylor Lipsett? Is there anything exciting coming on board, or are you just continuing to push that forward while raising your family?
Yeah. So since 2017, when I tried to make that comeback, we've since had a second daughter. And so, now we're a family of four. Like I mentioned, I was just elected to the executive committee and as the sled rep. So that's kind of the what next. That's still so new that, just experiencing that and letting that whole thing play out and what that looks like and what it means is kind of the what next at this point. And, just continuing on focusing on my career at home, which I'm a portfolio manager. I manage investments for private bank clients for Bank of America, still with the same company. It's the only company I've ever worked with. Just celebrated my 11th year anniversary in the third quarter.
Nice.
Just focusing on my career, my family, and trying to still have an impact on the game and the players in the sport of sled hockey as much as I can.
Yeah, definitely. I know you do. And I know that we are all appreciative of what you are doing at that executive level. So is there anything else before we end the show that you might like to say to anybody that's heard it, or anything, I don't know, just top of your head that you're thinking of?
No, I think we covered most of it. Thank you for having me, and thank you for, starting this podcast. One of the biggest forces behind the Paralympic movement is just educating the public on, the various disabled sports that are out there and, what opportunities disabled kids and adults and people have in the athletic world. And so, things like this podcast really help, educate the general public and helps change people's perception of what is possible for people with a disability. Because there's huge misconceptions out there. I had huge misconceptions about what I could accomplish myself, when I was younger. So hopefully, someone listening to this, it can, really change their mindset on how they look at people with disabilities. And if it's someone with a disability, hopefully it changes a mindset on, what they think they can accomplish themselves. So things like this is awesome. And thank you for doing it and committing to it. And best of luck as you kind of push this thing forward. I'll definitely be listening.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Taylor, again, for taking the time to be here. And to all of you that took the time to listen today, we thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Josh Sweeney podcast so you don't have to worry about missing the next one. Until next time.